Hello, everyone. Welcome once again, and thank you for joining us on School Matters. We appreciate you stopping by and listening with us, or maybe even viewing if you're on YouTube with us. My name's David Mustonen, Director of Communications for the Dearborn Public Schools. So today we're talking about a topic that gets a lot of discussion lately, and I think that maybe the discussion has been accelerated because of COVID. But really, it's a topic that's been around for many, many years, and a topic that I think we are getting more and more comfortable talking about, which is a good thing. I think that is probably one of the most positive things that has come out of maybe the pandemic is that more and more we're able to talk about and feel comfortable talking about our social emotional well-being. We're at the time of year when a lot of people will set new goals for the year, and maybe those goals involve diet or exercise and improving our physical health, but so often we forget that social emotional health. And it is just refreshing to know that people are paying way more attention to that now. And to talk about that, I have, as we've been doing here on School Matters, is because I'm just the communications guy. I like to bring in the experts, the true people who know what the heck they're talking about and can really shed some light on this and give us a good perspective about what's going on in the Dearborn Public Schools. So joining me first, right here on my right, is Mike Esseily, our Executive Director of Special Populations. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, David, for having us. We're excited to have this conversation today.
Great. And Dr. Rola Bazzi-Gates, Special Education Coordinator. Rola, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting us, David. We appreciate you.
And a new member to the Dearborn Public Schools staff, and I am so delighted to welcome Zanib Sareini, who is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Lead Facilitator. Zanib, thank you for being here today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, David.
Yeah, and we're going to be having just a conversation here for a little bit about social emotional learning, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that all kind of integrates together in creating those great environments in our schools. Before we get started, let's give everybody a little bit of background of our experts here. Mike, I'm going to start with you. Just a little bit about your time here in Dearborn, your roles that you've had here in the district.
Great. So actually, Dearborn Public Schools is all I know. I'm a proud graduate of Fortson High School of the class of 2000. I've been in Dearborn Public Schools as a special education teacher since 2007. After that, I became the assistant principal at Laurie School, and then I went on to be a special education coordinator, director of special education, and now my current role is executive director of special population. And really what that entails is I'm very blessed to get to work very closely with our special education department, in addition to working collaboratively with both our English learner department and our adult education department.
That's great, Mike. You just made me feel really old because I started here in 2000. I probably could have gone to I probably was at your graduation taking pictures. I'm going to have to go look at my old pictures and see if I can find any photos of you in there.
Yeah, there we go. Not a way to start out a social emotional conversation.
It's all good. It's all good, Mike.
It's all good.
Rola, I know you've been with the district as well for a while. So talk about your role that you've had here over the years.
Sure, David. I've been working in our Dearborn district for the last 25 years. I did 18 years as a school social worker in various schools, and also this is my 7 years serving as a special education coordinator, Fortson feeder, and supervising some of our special education programs in the district. And also we have 52 school social workers that I supervise, and we have a trauma behavior specialist, and also I oversee PBIS as a PBIS coordinator. We have restorative practices also and trauma-informed instruction. We have many programs in our district that we oversee, and we work together as a team with our colleagues.
That's great, Rola. Lots of hats, wearing lots of hats.
Yes, thank you.
And as I mentioned, new to their district, and we're so delighted that you are part of our district now, Zanib. and just a little bit about your background and where you've been and what you're planning, how you plan on being, what you plan on doing here in Dearborn.
Of course. Thanks, David. So I'm also a proud alum of Fortson High School, but I'm not going to tell you all the year because I don't I don't want to age myself or anybody else in the room.
Then you make us all feel really bad.
No. But I'm coming from a background in higher education. Well, actually, I taught fourth grade for a few years and then got my training in social work. I studied more macro social work. So I looked at community organizing and thinking about systems and how they impact individuals based on their own identities, and then vice versa, how individuals can impact systems. And then I spent a lot of time in higher education at the University of Michigan. So I was doing diversity, equity, and inclusion programming in a college setting. So I was supporting college students in feeling like they had a place on campus where they belonged and feeling like they were able to see themselves in things like the college curriculum, but also student life. I'm very, very, very excited to be able to do this work that I care so deeply about in my hometown of Dearborn. So I'm excited to be here and support the district's initiatives around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Awesome. That is incredible. And again, thank you for being here today. Thank all of you.
Welcome. Thank you
here
for
today.
inviting us.
Thank you for having us.
I know.
Yeah, this is
Thank
going to be a
you.
good conversation. I know. I can tell you. We got a lively group here.
Well, yeah, 2 social workers. You shouldn't have an issue.
So I guess I'd like to start just talking because, everybody focuses so much on the pandemic and how it impacted students. But really, I think we need to take a step back and we need to look at what we were doing, because we were doing quite a lot in the Dearborn schools before COVID ever hit. But maybe talk a little bit about those behaviors that maybe you've seen in the schools before COVID and after. Are they the same? How different are they? How are students reacting? And maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, David, great question. And, I'm just going to give you a little bit brief history of Dearborn Public Schools and what we call affective education, which, you can kind of interchangeably use with social emotional learning. It's about teaching the whole child and encompassing more than just academics to their day-to-day. I could tell you when I started in this role in 2016, there was actually a coordinator of affective education. Now, this was obviously well before the pandemic. So whether it was initiatives such as positive behavior intervention supports, restorative practices, those were things that were always near and dear to the Dearborn Public School heart, because we always knew we had to do more to meet the needs of our children and really educating the whole child. Now, you asked a great question. What was the difference between behaviors before the pandemic and after the pandemic? Well, actually, obviously being home for so long and going through such a trauma that they did with the pandemic, and, many of our students were impacted, whether, the loss of a loved one, whether it's what they were seeing on the news every day, whether it was just the isolation of being at home. We knew there was going to be a true impact when they reintegrated themselves back into normal life of going to school 5 days a week and, seeing some of their peers. So that's where really what we did was we wanted to make it a focus to anticipate some of those challenges that were going to come to us. In addition to that, I know Dr. Bazzi-Gates mentioned it a little bit. We increased the number of social workers greatly. I could tell you in 2016, we had about 29 social workers. Now we're well over 50 social workers in the district.
That's great.
Because we knew we had to address some of those concerns coming back from the pandemic, in addition to concerns that we've had, even prior to the pandemic. In addition to that, something that we did, and one of the very first PDs that we held was trauma-informed instruction. Was not only did we want our social workers and our providers and our support staff, but we wanted all teachers to be aware of trauma and how it impacts our students and maybe some of the behaviors, and hopefully provide them with just some of the skill set and the resources, in addition to some of the different things that they would need just to be successful. So was it perfect? No. Did we struggle with reintegration? I think we did. In addition to that, we all know about, some of the academic loss that we had as a result of the pandemic. We were grateful enough, though, behind the leadership of Dr. Maleko and the board, that we had, the last couple of years, this great summer school to address that. But we knew there was the affective piece that we had to address as well. Hence, if you look at it right now, with our MICA plan, which is a Michigan Continuous Improvement Process plan here for Dearborn Public Schools, you'll see that academics is equally as important now as affective education or social emotional. And really the discussions we're having by not only, us within this group, but some of our curriculum experts is how do we meet the needs of the whole child, not only the academic piece, but the social emotional piece as well. And I'm happy to say that although we're not where we'd like to be just yet, we are definitely making some gains in the right direction.
Well, I think that is vitally important that, people sometimes think, it's SEL, it's this program or this class that kids go to, or same with DEI, it's this set lesson that you learn, but it's not really, right? It's really integrating all of this into the entire educational experience and learning experience in our schools.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely, David. I just want to add to what Mr. Esseily said. He hit great points, honestly, when you talked about SEL. As a district, I remember from over 25 years, David, we used to focus on core values, on PBIS, on, honestly, assemblies, anti-bullying. We've been doing this over and over and over. All these initiatives in our district are very, very important. And I know I'm very proud to be, honestly, working our district and serving half of my job in this capacity, because we care about our students, our staff, our families, and we care about mental health. When we talk about social emotional learning, and also they go hand in hand with mental health, with also diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also trauma-informed instruction. So as Mr. Esseily said, we look at the whole child. When we go to school, we visit, we talk to parents, we observe a student, we support, we ask the team, whatever you need. We have school social worker, for example, they go to classroom, they do lessons about second step, which is, it's a program, for example, about, anger management, conflict resolution, about any issue that the student, they teach them the skills, and they teach them also coping mechanism about any issue they need help with. So there's a lot of support and programs and wonderful things that we are doing, honestly, for our students and staff, and also in terms of parent education as well.
That's great. That's awesome. I mean, and I think too that we, sometimes we can forget that, maybe in our circle, things seem fine and everything is well and good. But, we're talking about a district, 20,000 students, 100,000 people in the city of Dearborn, a variety of backgrounds, and social emotional well-being. It's not about somebody in this demographic or that demographic. It's all demographic. It's everybody. We're all humans, so it affects all of us.
Correct. Yes, it does affect.
Absolutely. Mental health matters. And that's why actually, one of the first things we did during the pandemic, just speaking about that, was we created a social emotional hotline. And we wanted to make sure that, anyone in the community really, primarily it was created for our students, but anyone in the community who wanted to reach out and talk about, social emotional, how they were feeling and things along those lines, we wanted to have experts available for them. And that line is still up and running, to this day as well. And, that was just one of the positive impacts, I think, of the pandemic moving forward. And, mental health matters. And we want to make sure that, we continue to talk about, as a community, as a public school institution, as a society, mental health and the importance of healthy mental health. We've done some great things in the past. I could tell you last summer we had a great mental health kickoff where we had a great panel of folks, including some board members and some experts in the mental health field, who are at Fortson High School, really providing students with just some information and just some feedback on the importance of mental health. So, as Dr. Bazzi-Gates said, it does really nicely tie all in together with, whether it's affective education, social emotional learning. The reality is having people feel good about themselves, having people feel comfortable, having an environment and a community that's very, very welcoming is extremely important. And honestly, seeking out help. We have great resources within the districts, whether they're partnerships with different organizations or our social workers and counselors in the schools. We have many resources to assist students, and we have anonymous ways to get access to those resources. Like I mentioned, whether it's a social emotional hotline, I know we also have safe boxes in schools, and different mechanisms as well, just to remain anonymous and whatnot if you are seeking help for any specific reason.
So you both kind of touched a little bit upon the training aspect, and I want to delve a little bit deeper into that. And so what types of training has our staff been exposed to, and who on the staff has been exposed to the various types of training that may be available that provide them with those tools they need to help our students?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For example, David, we invited speakers to speak about substance abuse and vaping, for example, to all our ancillary staff. When we talk about ancillary staff, school social workers, school psychologists, counselors, OTs, PTs, even our nurses in the district, special ed and general ed. We invited them because this is important topic. Honestly, talk about health and mental health and also physical. So it impacts the whole child, the whole student. Also, we will bring in also a speaker from Wayne State to speak about human trafficking for all our ancillary staff as well, and counselors, which is very important topic. And another one we're going to plan for implicit biases. So these are important topics, and also about mental health issues. We brought different organizations in the past to talk about, suicide, about depression and anxiety in students.
At a more global perspective, we do consider ourselves a restorative district. Back in 2016, we were fortunate enough to actually have 10 staff members trained to be trainers of restorative practices. And right from there, we ensured that we trained all administrators. We also started training different buildings on restorative practices and restorative approach, which again, a lot of people, when they think of restorative practices or restorative justice, they feel it's a circle, or when we talk about our feelings or things along those lines, although those are critical components and parts, right. It's really about the community building and how people feel every day when they walk into a specific building. I could tell you that, just this past school year, the very first professional development that a lot of our staff and all of our staff, including teachers, support staff, administrators, went through was through the social emotional competencies, the 5 CASEL social emotional competencies, which were adopted by the Michigan Department of Education, which include self-awareness and things along those lines, to where we wanted to make sure people really understood these were the 5 pillars of social emotional learning, and how do we embed them every single day into everything we do. Because, social emotional learning isn't a separate lesson per se, although a lot of us want that concrete, tangible, and there's a place for that. There's a spot for that. And those are things that we do offer as a district, but we wanted to embed social emotional into the environment, into the culture of what we do, whether it's through the CASEL competencies, through restorative practices, or through the mindset of trauma-informed instruction. We wanted to make sure that we were sending that message to, our community and our staff, that these are things that we can embed and that we're probably doing every day. Sometimes people underestimate the impact of smiling at a child and saying hello, or just asking them how they're doing, or just having affective statements, or the approaches that we have within the classroom, which is really what we're trying to work on in the district and continue to build upon some of the great things our teachers do naturally day to day.
Yeah,
sure.
I just want to add also to what Mr. Esseily said, something important, how we focus on the academic and also social emotional learning, and how they go hand in hand together. When we talk, for example, about school improvement plan or MyKIP, how we are focusing as a district, honestly, on both sides, the academic piece and also the social emotional learning. They go hand in hand, and we cannot separate them, so that's why when we look at the whole child, they come to school, they learn, we take care of our students from all aspects.
Well, and that's a great segue, and I'm going to pull Zanib into the conversation here, because I think that is a great segue into talking about that whole child, that whole environment, and that is a big part of what you're involved in with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I love the word inclusion at the end. I think that is so important. Inclusion of everybody, all people, and sometimes people. Lately, the DEI stuff, some people are using that term in a negative way, and that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate because they're not taking the time to truly understand what those words mean and what's it all about. So tell us, how is that going to work, and how's that going to look in Dearborn?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you have us all here together, because the more that I learn about, the more that I learn about district efforts, the more I learn about the work that you all do. It's very hard to talk about social emotional learning without talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and vice versa. We all know that when students feel emotionally safe, when they feel like they're valued in the classroom, they learn better, research shows that when students feel a sense of belonging in their classroom environment, their academic performance, their academic success, if you will, increases. And feeling a sense of belonging is about feeling valued, is about feeling represented in who you are, is about feeling included and supported. You said this, David, earlier, and Mike, you were hinting at it too, like, well, directly saying it as well. This isn't a separate lesson. Like, this has to be, you know, included in everything. When we say we want students to feel represented, we mean, you know, literally we want them to feel represented around, like when they're looking around the room at leaders in the school, at their teachers, support staff. Do these people look like me, but also do they value me? Is the curriculum include, you know, people who look like me, who sound like me, who talk like me? So even something as simple as representation is not this easy, like if we do this, you know, we're good to go. So in the district, of course, wants to ensure that all students, no matter their identities, feel supported and safe in their learning environment. So a lot of what I'm doing, and I have to say a lot of work has already happened and is continuing to happen well before I got here. You know, schools, the district has initiatives. They've been doing an equity series, training schools on supporting students of different identities and thinking about cultural humility, cultural proficiency, and what that looks like in the classroom. But also school leaders and teachers have been doing a lot of this work, you know, in the classroom and in the buildings. So I'm excited to support like those already existing initiatives, of course, and then continue to promote them through the district. It'll look a few different ways. It'll look like staff training and coaching. So it'll look like supporting staff members at the district level, but also like administrators, but also staff members in buildings, our teachers, our staff members who have direct contact with students, and thinking about and reflecting on who they are, how that might impact, you know, how they show up in the classroom, who their students are, and how that might impact how they show up in the classroom, which of course is directly tied to, you know, SEL as well. And then thinking about like our new teachers, how are we training them to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion? And then of course, working with our students. So what student programming can I support, or can we even create that helps students work together, help students build community, help students define what leadership means in a way that includes things like respecting others, making sure people feel included, and even gives them the tools to create inclusive environments themselves, students, teachers, you know, all the way up. So yeah, I can ramble about this for days. So I feel like that was a good stopping point.
You caught our interest. I just wanted to listen. Keep giving it to us. Great job.
Right in. I got it.
Awesome.
Definitely.
This is awesome.
But exciting though. Right?
Yes, it is
Absolutely.
exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To be part of all of this and
it's for our
to
kids.
make this, like you said, just something that's been part of our district for
Yes.
a long time, but now just kind of reinforcing it and maybe even just taking it to that next level a little bit more. I think, you know, as long as there have been kids in school, there's been bullying, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, let's just be honest about that. And it's not something unique to Dearborn, not unique to this state or this country. You know, you put a group of kids together and kids are going to behave and do the things that kids do. Yeah. But as responsible adults, as the system, you know, it's up to us to model and the behaviors that we want these children to have when they're in our buildings. And I think that that's a lot of the work that all of you are involved in, and that's the work that you're involved in, which sometimes can be much more difficult than a math teacher up there explaining Pythagorean theorem, you know, to a student, right?
Hard.
You know, but you know, because that's very concrete and that's very solid, and a lot of the work that all of you are involved in is a lot more abstract, and it goes into that deeper of who we are. So my hat's off to all of you, because I wouldn't want to be part of that. I couldn't do that. I want to be part of it.
You are
but
part of it.
I don't have those skills like all of you have to do that.
As Rola said, you're a part of it, but I can guarantee you I wouldn't be a very good communications director. And you know that is, so we appreciate you.
We appreciate you, David.
You know, before we wrap things up, I just want to give all of you an opportunity, if there's something that maybe we didn't get a chance to hit on and that you know wanted to make sure that those listening to our podcast knew about something that was going on in our district, or some point that you just felt was important that people take out of listening to this podcast. I just wanted to open the floor up to anybody.
I just want to give a big kudos and shout out to our, honestly, building staff, administrators, support staff for all the work they're doing, honestly. When we talk about social, emotional, or core values, or, important things that we want to teach our kids, it's the way they model in the classrooms, in the hallways, being visible in the hallways, monitoring student safety inside, outside the buildings, being there for our students. So I want to say thank you to all of them, and to our superintendent, Dr. Maliko, and our Board of Education. So thank you to all.
Great.
Thank you.
David, one quick thing. You mentioned just the term diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it is sometimes thrown around a lot. And I think the more it's thrown around, sometimes it has the opposite effect of, turning people off from it. And if it's not clear already, I just want to reiterate, like when we're talking about equity, when we're talking about inclusion, really the core of that is just making sure people feel respected and are being respectful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of work that we're doing, is giving students, giving teachers the tools to do that in a way that is supportive, in a way that is equitable, and in a way that will make sure we're empowering our students to kind of turn around and model those behaviors. So just wanted to reiterate that, if you will.
Perfect. That's a great point, and perfect.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I kind of echo what both Dr. Bazzi-Gates and Ms. Sareini said. And, the reality is we understand the importance of, people not only feeling a self of belonging, but also people being treated with respect. And really the reality is of why we do all these things is because we want to truly ensure that everyone who walks through those doors, is respected, is supported, and can meet their full potential. So I think that's something, and we'll continue to work with, our partners, our community, to ensure that, we do have the best school district possible. I do want to give, though, one shout out. I know Dr. Bazzi-Gates gave a shout out, but I do believe, it's National School Social Workers Month. And I can tell you right now that, they play an integral role with all of this, but they're truly superheroes. I could tell you a quick story about one of the social workers last night who was on the phone with till about 10, 11 o'clock at night because of a specific situation and a student issue. But, her reaching out to the family, her being supportive of the family, is really what social emotional is sometimes,
Yes.
right? It's making
Yes.
sure that, people know that we care, so as eloquently as Ms. Sareini said. So thank you to all our school social workers. You rock, and they're truly superheroes without capes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the month of March
Yes.
is school social work.
School social
So
work
when we
month,
see
yes.
a school social work, just go and give them a big hug.
Yeah,
Right?
you have-
Give
you
them
have-
a
Social
big
work
hug.
month,
Big
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of them, yes.
Well, that's great. Well, I want to again thank all of you, for the three of you, for being here today. We appreciate
It's
it.
our
And
pleasure.
I hope that our listeners now will have a little bit better understanding of some of the things. We've just touched on really a much bigger, broader subject.
Sure.
But at least now we hope that people will have a little bit better understanding of what's going on in our district and some of the things that we're doing. And of course, people can always reach out directly to us, and we're always here and available to share more
Sure.
information and share all the good things going on in the Dearborn Public Schools. I want to thank everybody for stopping by and listening or watching School Matters. We've got a lot of great things going on in our district, and we've got a lot of great subjects that we'll be talking about here in the future. And we want to make sure that everybody continues to stop by and visit with us on our podcast on School Matters, and always remembering that the reason why we do things is because...